the very beginning and continued until I got sober. And that was my first real consequence. And, you know, from the age of 17 all the way to the time I got sober at 23, it was, you know, consequences, drastic consequences like that, you know, all the time, you know. After that first DWI definitely scared me, I think, a little bit for like a minute, you know. It really didn't scare me very long, because drinking was still, it still had a hold on me, you know, and it still felt like, okay, well, maybe I just, you know, I had a bad night, or, you know, it was just a one-time thing, and people get DWIs. It's not that big of a deal. And, you know, I can move on from it. I can get through this. And I ended up going to college. I went to St. John's University in Queens, New York, and I thought, you know, that was going to be the solution, you know, a geographical cure, which, again, I didn't know at the time, but that's ultimately where my mind was. It was where I was living. It was the people I was hanging out with. I just needed to get out of Rockaway, and I would be fine. And, of course, the exact opposite happened, you know, and I had even more freedom to drink and use the way I wanted to. And I did exactly that, you know. My first semester, I did terribly. I mean, I never went to class. I drank around the clock. I just, you know, and these are new people, so they weren't used to my antics yet either. And like part of my disease, part of like my tactic, my manipulation that I, you know, acquired, like these defenses that we acquire for drinking, right? We're controlling by nature, and we're manipulative to get what we want, and we're selfish to the core. And, you know, one of the things is that I would do is I would, you know, I would make, you know, have people like me right off the bat. So that way, when I started to do things that people didn't like, they already had this established relationship with me that, like, they liked me. So they overlooked a lot of things that I would do because I was their friend, you know. And I found that tactic very helpful for me for years. I would do that with employers, and I would keep jobs way longer than I should have. And it was just another aspect of my disease coming out in another way. And again, I'm thinking that I'm fine. You know, like, yeah, I know I drink a little bit more than the average person. I definitely, you know, I drug and this and that. And okay, maybe these people aren't doing what I'm doing, but they're not that far off from what I'm doing, you know. And I'm in college, and I'm in my 20s. So, you know, I could find every excuse in the world to justify my drinking. But, you know, it's that behavioral aspect of this disease that we have no idea is running our lives as well. And then it's just a vicious cycle. So my junior year of college, I got an apartment off campus with some roommates, and, you know, even more freedom, right? Because St. John's was actually a dry campus. So, you know, I had gotten kicked off of that campus for drinking and, you know, talked my way back into it. I used to say all the time, you know, I would get in trouble and get into these situations, and I would do like what Will Ferrell does in Old School, where all of a sudden, like, they ask him this question and he has no idea what the answer, and then he just spits out this like incredible answer, and then he's like, what happened? I blacked out. And like, that's exactly how I like lived. Like, I don't know, I could just get myself out of whatever mess I was in, and I have no idea how I would do it. And that's pretty much the gist of my entire story, right? But my junior year of college, like I said, I got that apartment, and eventually I met somebody that ended up, you know, being my running buddy, and he co-signed everything that my disease wanted to do. You know, it was living inside of me, and while I was letting it out often, I still just wanted to, it was still like in me where I felt like I was being held back from what I really wanted to do. And, you know, I found him, and he was at the same spot I was, and we went running, and ultimately, like, I dropped off the face of the earth for like 8 months. You know, nobody wanted anything to do with me because, you know, I started burning all the bridges I had and exhausting all my resources, and my parents wanted nothing to do with me, and my roommates kicked me out, and I ended up being homeless for about 8 months at that time. And it's like sick that, like, as much as I hated it, I loved it at the same time, because that's what my disease wanted me. It wanted me there. It wanted me miserable. All I had to do was, figure out how I was going to eat, maybe find a place to sleep, and just drink and drug all day, every day. And it didn't matter because I had no responsibilities at that point. And, that fed that addiction. And it was one of the lowest points of my life, of course, but that still wasn't enough to get me sober. I just thought, again, I got caught up with the wrong guy, and that was just a low point in my life. And eventually, and I believe this to be God, I got out of what I was in. And it truly was by the grace of God. And I won't give all the gory details, but, it was really, really terrible. And I'm lucky that I made it out alive, and somehow through that whole time, I managed to graduate college. And I think, again, that's because I was fearful that even though my parents weren't speaking to me and wanted nothing to do with me, I still had to graduate. Like, it was still that driving force in my life. And my parents let me move back home. And at this point, I'm probably like 22. And again, another geographical cure. I'm going to change. That was such a bad time. I'm lucky I made it out. I got away from that guy. School's done. I did that. And now I can just go home, regroup, and everything's going to be okay. But as we know, wherever I go, my problems follow me, and I don't realize that at the time. And I continue basically to do what I was doing, just now back at home in Rockaway with a different group of people that didn't know me again, And at one point, I was working in a restaurant for a while, and the restaurant business and me just don't mesh well. It's a lot of drinking and partying, and the hours are perfect for that. So I was working there for a while, and then in about 2007, I guess it was, I got a big girl job, as I like to say. And it was, an office job. It was a sales job. And I thought, all right, this is it. I'm finally going to grow up. I'm going to get my act together. And, again, it's going to be different this time. I lived in this delusion that external factors, if I just change these external factors, I would be okay. Things would be different, things would change. And I started this job, and again, I pulled the same thing that I did, with every other job or every other person I came in contact with. I had you really like me, and I worked hard for, a little while. And then that's when I pull my scheme, if you will, that I don't even know I'm pulling. And some of the women at this job loved to drink during lunch. And that I thought was great. So now I'm getting blackout drunk at work, on the job, coming back to the office. My boss started working from home a few days a week. So now I'm able to drink on the job. My boss isn't there, and just doing whatever I wanted to do again. And now we're in about March of 2009. And I got my second DWI. And I honestly, when I think about it, it blows my mind that I only got 2. I drank and drove all the time. I never had a license. I would drink and drive your car with no license. It didn't matter. I was reckless in every way, shape, and form. And I got this second DWI, so I was like, all right, the only solution here is to move in with my boyfriend that I was dating at the time, and I will get a ride to work with the woman I work with who happens to live down the street from him, and everything will be fine, because this woman will have no problem driving me to work for the next 2 years to and from. I'm sure that'll be fine, just so everything I would do, fix, manage, and control, and just selfish to the core. Why would I think some random woman would drive me to and from work for 2 years, and that's how selfish and self-centered I am when I'm drinking, or even when I'm not drinking. We'll get there with the steps soon, but that job, then, so I moved in with him, and in May of 2009, that job sent me to Vegas by myself with their business credit card. And I got fired 3 days after I got back, because you can imagine, I don't remember the trip. I really don't remember. I just remember thinking Vegas was the be all end all, and I never wanted to leave there. And how can I stay? It was, it's like an alcoholic's dream there when you're using. And yeah, I got fired from that job. So now I am on unemployment living with my boyfriend, and it's the summertime. And again, I'm thinking, man, things are just really working out, like, so I in that time from 15 to 23, I think I got arrested like 6 or 7 times, and again, those consequences, no matter how mad people got at me, no matter how many times I got arrested or what it was for or whatever, none of it really fazed me in a sense. Like, yeah, I felt the feelings at the time, of course, and I'd have this, shame and guilt and remorse and, beg and plead with everybody and anybody, because every night I drank, I pissed somebody off, and I was a liar, a cheater, and a stealer. That's what I did. That's how I lived my life. And I really, I convinced myself that I wasn't those things, even though it was blatantly obvious that I was, because I was like, oh, well, I came from a good family and I have good friends, and on the outside, on paper, I should be this good person, and my actions proved differently. And so it's July 3rd, 2009. And I think it's so ironic that my sobriety date is July 4th, because it has been my favorite day of the year since I can remember. Like, I figured you can drink all day long. It doesn't matter. I love fireworks and cheeseburgers, and I just love 4th of July. And because I love it so much, I start celebrating 4th of July, like multiple days before the actual day. And, that's exactly what I did. So July 3rd, I, typical, just, drinking all day, because I didn't have a job at that point. And I was getting kicked out of somebody's sister's party or something, and I convinced a guy, to drive me to my car, and I went down to Patterson and, let somebody in my car I shouldn't have, and got robbed. And, I'm driving home now, and I have no gas, and I have to pull my car over because I ran out of gas, and he stole my phone and he stole my money. And by the grace of God, I didn't get a third DWI that night, which is shocking. But some older man and his son and this like old grandma, I could never understand it. It was like very late. They pulled over and they towed my car all the way back to Denville, which is where I was going, which was kind of far. And, I'll never forget my last drink. I was by myself, and it was Crown Royal, and I took the shot and I passed out. And I woke up the next morning, and of course I knew I had wreckage to deal with because of things I had done throughout that day. And my boyfriend's kicking me out, and I'm like, blaming him and every excuse and sorry, you go from like that anger, rage to the remorse. And eventually he tells me to get out, and I go to my parents' house and give them the sob story that, he's the bad guy and poor me. I played the victim all the time. And he was so mad at what I had done the day before that he called my parents and told them about this arrest that I had that they didn't know about. And I was livid. And I stole some money, and I, got in my car and put gas in it. And I went over there, and I started like assaulting him, ultimately is what I was doing. And he called the cops, and I got arrested for assault. So the only reason why I didn't drink on 4th of July that year was because I was arrested in the police station all day. So they eventually let me out, and I go home, and my parents, again, nothing to do with me. Nobody wants anything to do with me, but I have nowhere to go, no phone, no gas, no anything. And, I connive my way back into the house. And, at one point they leave to go get something to eat. And, all of a sudden the doorbell starts ringing. And it's my brother. And my brother means more to me than any person in this entire world. And he came barreling through the door, screaming, telling me how much of a disappointment I am and how he wants absolutely nothing to do with me, and just going on and on. And I remember him like trying to drag me out of their house. And I just like, my body just went limp. And in an instant, I was just like, I don't know who I am anymore. And in that moment, it was over. It was just over. And I believe that God had been talking to me and trying to help me my entire life. And that was just the moment I heard him. And I didn't know it at the time, but I became completely willing. The pain was so great that I was literally willing to do anything it took to get out of it. And I didn't know what that meant or entailed. And I didn't even know that meant getting sober. But I just knew I couldn't keep living like I was living and feeling the pain that I was feeling. So luckily, well, not really luckily, but one of my best friends growing up, she had gone into the program. She was in NA for 4 years and she relapsed. And I remember thinking, I made an amends to her because I thought it was like the greatest thing that she relapsed, not knowing what relapse was, right? But she was about a year back, and I called her up and I was like, Rose, like, alcohol's ruining my life. And she's like, I've been waiting for this call. And she's like, this is what we're going to do. And she took me to a meeting, and I got into my mom didn't know what to do. So she took me to my doctor, and I got into an IOP program. And Rosie took me to my first meeting, and I remember walking in. It was a grapevine meeting. It was a Friday night, 7:30 at a clubhouse in Denville, New Jersey. And I shared, and I felt like I was home. Like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, like this, there's something happening right now. Like, and I'm blessed that I felt like that, because if I didn't feel like that, I don't know how my story would have looked. So, I got connected, and women came right up to me after the meeting. I shared it was my first meeting, and I had, maybe a couple days sober, whatever. And that started my journey. And I got, like I said, I got plugged in from the very beginning, and I got put with women who were really about the program, and not just like talking about it, but really being about it. And I'm so grateful, because I got into the work pretty quickly. And I had one sponsor. I think I went through like 1 through 4 with her, and I shared my experience with my friend Rosie about on my 4th step. And she's like, Alyssa, that's really great, but there's really a lot more to it. There's really a lot more you can learn. And that prompted me to change sponsors at about 6 or 7 months sober. And this woman that I changed to, she changed my life. She saved my life. And she took me through the work again from the beginning, and she taught me how to live, and she taught me about balance, and she taught me and helped me to learn about my character defects and how I can put the drink and the drug down, but I am still a sick person, and that's kind of how I work my program today, that I remember that I have to constantly work the steps in every aspect of my life. They are the solution for every problem I have today. And it's a matter of whether I want to use the tools I have, or if I want to sit in my own shit, because I'm convinced I'm addicted to like self-pity and sadness. And my disease manifests in so many different ways, and I have to constantly stay vigilant and be on top of it. I have a higher power in my life today, and that's something I struggled with. I just celebrated 8 years, and it's probably been the past 6 months that I've truly started to kind of understand and develop a real relationship with a higher power, not just something I call on that, I grew up Catholic, and, I've been stuck in this box and having a punishing God. And, I was very ritualistic and superstitious in the way I lived my life, in regards to a higher power as well. And it's a little difficult to explain, but I was like, all right, if I do this, this will happen. If I accidentally, did something out of order, right, in my normal routine, okay, well then something bad's going to happen. And that's me living on self-will. That's, old behaviors, old thinking, disease thinking. And, that's not trusting my higher power. That's not living, a peaceful life. And, turning things over is difficult for me, you know, because I'm a hands-on learner. So you want me to turn something over that I have no way of physically doing. And, you know, I struggle with that. And the crazy thing is over the years, as I've practiced, you know, doing that, and hopefully, you know, I'm getting a little bit better at it as time goes on, you know, things turn out incredible. Absolutely incredible, way better than I could have ever had them turn out. You know, I sell myself short when I try and get involved. God has a way better plan for me than I could even dream. So, you know, I have a strong network of women that I rely on, you know, that I trust them with my life. And I was taught, you know, I have to just be honest. And that's the biggest thing I think I do in my program today, that no matter what, I am honest with my sponsor and the women in my network. I have to tell them what's going on or what I'm thinking, because if I don't, that's when I'm in trouble. Even if it's something stupid, like, oh, you know, I looked at that beer and like I had a weird thought. Like, I got to call them and tell them that, you know, like, that's my disease trying to get me. And I'll tell you, like, that 7th year of sobriety I just went through was definitely the hardest one I've ever been through. Drinking and drugs penetrated my consciousness more this past year than it ever has. You know, and I just had to stay vigilant, and I just had to keep talking about anything that was going on, you know. So part of my story too is that when I was, you know, in my first year of sobriety, I was introduced to NJYPAA. And, you know, I was dating a guy that was involved. It was shown to him, and that being a part of that, experiencing NJYPAA, coming in the rooms at 23, and I was probably 24 when I first experienced it, like, that gave me so much hope, you know, because when I came in, I thought my life was over. You know, I'm 23, and what am I supposed to do now? Especially when all my friends are out drinking and hanging out and partying and doing this and doing that, and I can't hang out with them. Not right now. And the friends that were true were still there when I was ready. But I needed to be able to have fun in sobriety. And, you know, I had a great crew of people that were really living this thing and really working a program and sober and looking to have fun. And we did that. And we, you know, we would go to dances in the city, and we got involved. You know, I got hooked up with being a part of the NJYPAA Host Committee in 2010 in New York. And I remember that was the first time I ever in my life felt useful and a part of. And that's what NJYPAA has done for me. It fills this void that I have, where I don't feel loved and I don't feel connected. And NJYPAA has filled that on a level that I can't even explain in words. So, you know, a few years ago when New Jersey started getting on track of like saying enough is enough, basically, you know, and this is a conversation that's been going on for more than a few years, but the timing, I guess, just was God's timing in the past couple of years. And we all got together, you know, South Jersey, they were the ones who got the bid committee going, and about 3 years ago, and it started really taking shape about last year, and now we have like a full statewide bid committee and really like spreading the word about NJYPAA and ECPA, and being a part of that is just it means so much to me, because knowing like my background and where I came, and you know, having NJYPAA be such a crucial piece of my recovery, especially in the beginning, and a consistent piece of my recovery. And, you know, always having that envy that all these other states are like, you know, they have their committees and they're doing their thing. And I'm like, man, you know, Jersey needs to have that. Like, we don't have that. And now we're doing it. And it's incredible. And again, that fire is relit by being a part of a committee, you know, and just the excitement and the camaraderie and all the good we're doing, and taking on, you know, commitments like this, and everybody meeting, and the friendships and the bonds. I mean, I can just go on and on and on, obviously. But it's just a huge part of my recovery story, you know, and I'm so blessed to be a part of it, and that we were asked, our committee, to take on this commitment. So I think that's really all for me. So thank you for letting me share.